YouTube, how the hell you doing? Brain Smasher is back with another collection update. Still working on the angle here, kind of trying to get things a little more, I don't know, worked out better. I got a new chair, put up some new posters, trying to get the angle just right, the way I want it. It's been a little bit of a while. Like I said in my last video, started a new job. It's going great. Just been kind of occupied with that. Last week I was in like training class all week and just been kind of getting used to the new schedule and stuff, but it's great so far. Really looking forward to making a lot more money that I can blow on the bullshit that I talk about on my channel. So something weird happened with my last video. It got deleted, and so I don't know, I just re-uploaded it a couple days later. Sorry, I don't know how the hell that happened, but whatever. Got a lot of ground to cover here today, so let's just get right to it. If you don't mind, let's listen to some Master's Hammer while I'm talking. This is Nice Occultist. I need to listen to this band a lot more often, but this band made it cool to be weird and made, I guess, like the things that were weird about this band now, I feel like, are pretty normal. So, important band in the history of metal. I've gotten a few things in, and we've got more CDs to go through. All of the bands start with the word death. Speaking of death, Nightbringer. I got this in a couple weeks ago, and I guess I forgot to mention it on my channel. I've only listened to one of the LPs so far. I've been so busy, like too busy to spin wax lately, but I saw this pop up on I don't know, this is out on Seasons of Mist, but this is some special version that's limited to like 100 copies or something, like a sort of a dark green version or whatever. So I don't know, I jumped on it. My first impression of it is, I don't know, I almost wonder if I wasn't playing it on the wrong fucking speed, to be honest with you. I just put it on when I was cleaning in here and didn't really have much time to focus on it, but yeah, it says limited to 100 copies worldwide, so I don't know, I just figured, why not? I also got in, this is such a beautiful digipack. This is a band called Wolfhitan, I guess that's how you would pronounce it. Comes in a beautiful A5 digibook. This was self-released by the band. This is a solo project. Nice vellum booklet in here. This is a solo project of the guitar player and singer from Odal. Great band. This is a great album, and the one that came out after it, I want to say like 2015, is really killer. I need a copy of it, but it's pretty rare. But I saw this pop up on Discogs for a couple of bucks the other day. Had to get it. And then the other thing I got in, Botanist. This is, I think, the most recent, I'm probably wrong on that. It's a recent album by Botanist called Flora. Really strange band, and I just found myself listening to their first album the other day, and I just got to thinking, you know what, this is really interesting stuff. Instead of guitars and bass, dulcimer is used in all of this band's material. First album was pretty much just like, I guess, straightforward black metal, even though it's bizarre as fuck not hearing guitars and hearing dulcimer added in. The second album, I want to say, was like a doom album. It was called Doom and Bloom. But I just kind of did some more listening in this band's discography and found this one, I think it has a little bit of guitars, and I felt like that was kind of what I wanted to hear this band do, was like not erase all of the guitars, but, you know, just use a little bit of guitar in harmony and in concert with the dulcimer. So it's a really interesting listen. Definitely put a link down below for you to check it out. They're from Oakland, California, if I'm not mistaken. So let's get to the death. Last time we left off at Death's, I don't know, Leprosy, I guess it would have been. So next is Human. One of my favorite albums. Probably my favorite death album. I talked about this quite a bit in the 19 death metal albums that got me into death metal. You know, what can you say about this band and album? Get this album if you don't have it. It's just a landmark, great band. Death is just one of those bands that has such a solid discography. It's pretty incredible, like how great they were. Think about any other band that has, 7 just stellar albums, just one after another. They were all fucking good. I guess if I had to choose worst Death album, that's a hard question. Maybe The Sound of Perseverance. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that album, but just the least best, I guess we could say. Anyways, next I got Symbolic. Of course, this is awesome. Gene Hoglan's on it. Another lineup change. I wasn't really a fan of Death at the time all the lineup changes were going on, so I never really understood why there were so many lineup changes in the band, but I'm a huge fan of Gene Hoglan's drumming, and I think his best work is with Death, but I kind of prefer Sean Reinert's playing in Death on Human, so that would be really like one of the only reasons that I prefer Human to Symbolic and Individual Thought Patterns. If I remember, I don't know, for some reason I always reach for Human pretty much. I kind of get these two confused, and that's just really idiotic of me because these are classic, amazing albums. They're just, see, like the cover, they're kind of confusable, but I think I remember thinking this one is a little bit more technical than this one, but what does it matter? They're both great. And then we have The Sound of Perseverance. So this has Richard Christie on drums. Again, different lineup. Of course, Chuck Schuldiner. I feel like he was reaching out for sort of a more, I don't know, simplistic song structure. Kind of more like verse, chorus, verse sort of songwriting style. But I love the vocals on this. And this was my first foray into hearing Judas Priest's Painkiller. The cover of Painkiller on here, amazing. One of the greatest metal covers ever recorded. I'm so glad he recorded that cover of that. Painkiller is one of my favorite like traditional heavy metal albums. Yeah, I'll just not get off on too many tangents. Here's a band called Death Dies. What a bad band name. Out of Italy. This is some just barbaric, brutal, blackened death metal, I guess I would say. Not really in the traditional sense. It's just really unrelenting, pummeling, speediness, kind of like Marduk, I guess I would say. Nobody really seems to talk about this band, and I think you'd probably be able to find some copies of the LP in distros out there. It's pretty good. I recommend picking that up. Next, Death in June, Oh How We Laughed. It's their best live album, and in my opinion, my favorite Death in June album. I talked about this in my last You Would Be Surprised I Listened to This video, so I won't go into too much detail, but this is a killer Death in June release. One of my favorite non-metal albums, honestly. Next is Death Sentence. This album is called The World Despairs. So I was just shopping for used CDs at Cheapo maybe 2 or 3 years ago. This looked interesting. I had never heard of the label, never heard of the band. I couldn't really tell anything about this other than it was worth the $5 to give it a shot, and it's probably worth about $5 to me, honestly. It just sounded so uninspired and typical that it just didn't really do anything for me. But I find that I keep those kind of albums around anymore, and I just keep trying every couple of years. I'll put something that I remember not liking on, and try again, and try again, and try again. And I feel like eventually maybe the mood will arise where it really hits the spot, and that's when it clicks, and that's when I don't know, am glad that I bought this CD for $5 8 years ago, you know. So maybe this CD's time will come down the road, who knows. I've got quite a few things like that where it just gathered dust for a long time until the right mood struck, and I had like an album that I loved sitting in my collection waiting to be loved for so many years. Anyways, we got a lot to cover from this band. One of my favorites, Death Spell Omega. I don't know if these are in order. I got into this band kind of late, maybe 2002, 3 or so. so I kind of got all their stuff to catch me up to speed. Anyway, this is Infernal Battles, one of my favorites from them. This has Disciples of the Ultimate Void demo on it, and their Infernal Battles demo as well, collected. Just killer infernal finish black metal on Northern Heritage. Here we have Inquisitors of Satan, also killer. Pretty similar to the demos, just maybe a little bit more well produced. I love this fucking record to death. Next, well, that's not really, I guess I've talked about this one quite a bit, Manifestations 2002. Killer unreleased stuff that came out. Well, it was recorded after this, but it wasn't released until 2007, something like that. Get this, man, it's so good. Just no frills, no bullshit, amazing, simplistic black metal. And this is also really killer too. Manifestations 2000 and 2001. More unreleased material that wasn't released until 2005, 6, 7, something like that. But good stuff. If the first era of Decibel Omega is your thing. Next, Clandestine Blaze split with Decibel Omega. I should probably listen to this a lot more often than I do. Clandestine Blaze is one of those bands that's kind of hit or miss with me. Mikko Aspa's projects are kind of hit or miss with me, but every once in a while he really hits on the nail on the head. Some Clandestine Blaze albums I think are really good. Some are pretty boring, so it's it's one of those bands I check in with every so often. But then in 2003, C Monumentum Requires Circumspice came out, and they changed their style up a whole bunch. And this album blew my fucking mind. Well, I can't believe it's been like 14 years ago that this came out now. Am my math right? That seems crazy, but amazing album nonetheless. This is so fucking good. Talk about a game changer. This is a band that's just always kind of raised the bar as far as what you can do and what is cool to do in black metal. So I guess, I don't know, I almost consider their two eras two separate bands in a way. I love them both, but to compare the two just kind of isn't fair to me because they're both just so starkly different. But then we have Canos. This was the album that came out after C Monumentum Requires Circumspice. A lot of killer artwork in here. I really like the artwork on this album, but I don't listen to it very often. I feel like this is kind of the area where I kind of forget about this kind of stuff. This is the split they did with Svest, Chaining the Catacon. So this is like a 20-minute long song that was originally released on the split. This is just released separate from that, since I can't stand that band's Svest whatsoever. I don't get what the deal is. Next we have, well, there's Paracletus. I only have Paracletus on LP, but this is Fas Maledicti Inignum Aeternum. And this is kind of where you start to see some of the maybe post-rock influence with the band. Some more subtleties getting thrown in there for variety. I really like this album a lot, and Paracletus too. The Drought EP is another one I don't have. Drought shows them doing a lot more of that kind of post-rock sort of influence, and I really like that. I have it on my wish list on Discogs. It's just for some reason kind of hard to get. But this is their album from last year. I can't remember what it's called. The Synarchy of Molten Bones. I talked about this in the video when I picked it up back in January. A little too claustrophobic for me. Kind of annoyed with the mixing and the mastering in this, and I don't know, this might be where I stop listening to Decibel Omega. I don't know. Unless they do something and kind of reinvent themselves quite a bit on their next release, I don't know if I'm going to buy another album from them. But that's not to say that some of their albums are not some of my favorite black metal albums of all time. So next, Death Witch, Dawn of Armageddon. This is on Necropolis. This is just perfect black thrash metal. Well, I don't know what to tell you about this band, but it's so fucking good. Really cheesy and kind of hokey. It's just got such a lovable charm to it. The band is from Sweden, and I think members of Sacramentum play in this band. But there's just kind of like one of those, the elements of their music is just like they have this inalienable sense of melody. And while they're trying to be like necro and black metal and thrash, they just can't help but add this little sort of tinge of melody to it, and it just makes it so charming and lovable. This is Triumphant Devastation by the same band, also on Necropolis. This one has 2 ladies in the band. Check that out. I've never really followed up to see what other bands they were in or what's up with them, but yeah, that's that album. This one is not so great. I think this is maybe their 3rd or 4th record. Violence, Blasphemy, and Sodomy. This is just where it kind of, they lose their charm. They're kind of starting to move into the 2000s and kind of trying to change with their style. It's really cheesy, and I don't really care for this album that much. Fuck off! The reason I have this is I found it in Ireland. In 2007, I was visiting Ireland, and I visited maybe 2 record stores, and I couldn't find a goddamn thing to buy in those stores. So I just went with this, and it sucks. Anyway, so that brings us to our close. I'm a little scatterbrained today, so I apologize. But thanks for joining me. Thanks for subscribing, and listen to some of these albums. It'll do yourself some good. Have a good weekend, everybody. Later.